From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the news at 10, live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight,
Bimbo Oloyede.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, federal government calls for vigilance in managing the spread of Ebola virus disease, confirms that a female doctor has contracted the virus. APC leaders meet in Owerri, brainstorm on how to tackle the nation's health challenges. The military and Boko Haram battle for control of Bama in Borno State as army imposes curfew in Maiduguri. And regional leaders reject Lesotho's call for deployment of troops to help restore order in the country.
And on business news tonight, reintroduction of new charge on ATM withdrawals begins today. Different views trail CBN's directive.
And on sports news tonight, it's just a few hours to FIFA's deadline for the newly elected Nigeria Football Federation to vacate office, but there is still no end in sight to the crisis rocking the football house.
We begin tonight with a warning from the Minister of Health, Professor Onyebuchi Chukwu, that the danger of Ebola virus disease still looms. The cases have now increased to 16. And the latest is a female doctor who was on admission in the same hospital where the Port Harcourt doctor died.
This is a gathering of the National Council on Health, comprising all states commissioners of health, the 2 ministers of health, and directors from the ministry. The forum aims at appraising the preparedness of states to contain the virus and give current updates on the national status of the Ebola disease. According to the Minister of Health, a total of 17 cases, including the index case, have been confirmed so far. 14 have been managed in Lagos, with 7 treated successfully. 6 deaths have also been recorded, including the late doctor in Port Harcourt and Patrick Sawyer, the Liberian-American who brought the disease into the country, while 2 patients are currently undergoing treatment in Lagos. Apart from this, however, the situation in Port Harcourt remains a critical one, even though authorities have advised citizens not to panic.
Presently, as I speak, 1 case of Ebola virus disease, a 3rd-degree contact, is being treated in Rivers State. 2 other contacts of the late Port Harcourt doctor, that is, one of the doctors who managed him, and a pharmacy technician working for the doctor, are symptomatic. But as at yesterday, when they were tested, both of them were negative.
The federal government, they are on ground, and they said that the Federal Ministry of Health have sent their team. They are working with us. They are on ground. We have the disease surveillance notification officers in the 23 LGAs. And then we have the state surveillance officer and the state epidemiologist who handle issues.
While the number of those under surveillance in Lagos have dropped from 350 to 72, that of Port Harcourt have risen to 199.
We do expect that a few more contacts will develop the EVD, especially in Rivers State, before Nigeria will see the last case of the disease. It is, however, encouraging thus far that all confirmed cases of Ebola virus disease in Nigeria have their roots in the index case. So far, so good. All the ones we've identified have their roots in the index case. Great vigilance is required, particularly at our ports of entry, to ensure that we do not have cases of Ebola virus disease from other sources other than Mr. Sawyer. So while we are happy that all the cases in Nigeria have still been traced to one source, we should know that the possibility exists that we can have another original case from a different person being brought into the country. Therefore, great vigilance.
Meanwhile, all the 6 identified contacts in Enugu placed under surveillance have completed their observation periods. The government says it will deploy a strong incident management team to Port Harcourt to work with the state government in containing the virus.
Well, it's also been a busy day for the River State Commissioner for Health, Dr. Samson Parker, as he told journalists in Port Harcourt today that the patient mentioned by the minister is a relative of the late doctor who succumbed to the Ebola disease. Like others across different states, the commissioner is urging for increased vigilance. Our correspondent, Mary Alali Yusuf, reports.
The River State Commissioner for Health, Dr. Samson Parker, also at a briefing with journalists in Port Harcourt, says that 4 doctors, 8 nurses and 6 expatriates have volunteered to work at the treatment center in Emoha, River State. He sheds more light on the Ebola situation in the state.
A lady, the sister of Dr. Ike in Emoha, went off to Abia. Just to inform you that we got her back. And we have sent her to the center. We still want to encourage those persons that are lined and we have not seen to come up. We have a lady that moved, I don't know if I told you, to Akwa Ibom from the hotel. We are still to get to her. We have set our dragnets through the SSS to the officials in Akwa Ibom. They are all looking after her. The one that went to Imo State too, as at yesterday, returned. She's still okay.
Former President Olusegun Obasanjo has added his voice to others on how to contain the Ebola virus disease, advocating a summit where a national policy on the Ebola disease would be formulated. At an event in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital, the former president says the EVD problem is now giving more concerns. In his words, the EVD has started to take its toll on the country and the West African sub-region. The toll is not only on the number of those that are ill or dead, but on the economy of communities, countries, region and sub-region. Moving on to Kogi State, where Governor Idris Wada has told the people in the state to continue to take hygiene very seriously by washing their hands as many times as possible to avoid contracting the Ebola disease. He said this while in Ajaokuta local government area of the state during his thank you tour to the area.
Wash your hands with soap as many times as you can during the day. Don't shake hands if you can. If you must shake very few. And immediately after, go and wash your hands. Because you don't know who carries this thing.
After its Lagos Ebola awareness campaign, the National Union of Textile, Garment and Tailoring Workers has taken the campaign to Kaduna in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Health.
I would like to leave this place with you committing to a work plan. I would like to leave this place achieving and being fulfilled that you have an Ebola response team.
The General Secretary of the Union, Issa Aremu, asks the Nigerian government to review the ECOWAS Treaty on the free movement of persons within the West African sub-region to curtail further spread of the virus and other airborne diseases.
Nigeria has to really wake up to really offer leadership within the sub-region. One of the committees that we had is Committee on Foreign Affairs. I think one of the recommendations of that committee is that Nigeria must try to instill some discipline within the ECOWAS sub-regions. Because honestly speaking, if we really abide by the ECOWAS protocols, we should not have this kind of lapses. in which you know a disease that doesn't have a cure, and globally WHO Health Organization had put restrictions on movement, and then we allow cover for this guy to leave the country.
Also in Kaduna State, the stage is being set for the return of pupils and students to school in mid-October, with the state government asking head teachers to screen them before resumption. The State Commissioner for Education is promising to furnish private and public schools with the necessary medical equipment to carry out these tests before the date. Continued enlightenment campaigns on Ebola are important, but Nigerians will also have to keep the faith by adhering to personal hygiene rules, reporting any suspected case, and for those under surveillance to stay where the health authorities can keep a close watch on them. Mary Alale Yusuf, Channels Television News.
The fight against the deadly Ebola virus disease seems to be attracting more support, with the latest coming from MTN Nigeria, which today donated some items and protective gear for frontline health workers and caregivers. The chairman, MTN Nigeria, Pascal Dozier, who led the team to Government House in Alausa, said the gesture was to supplement action taken by government to curtail the virus. In his response, the state governor, Babatunde Fashola, applauded MTN's continual commitment to various projects in the state.
The conference hall of the Lagos State Government House, Alausa, playing host to some top officials of the MTN and members of the press. A status accorded the fight against the Ebola virus disease by government explains the presence of the governor and other top officials here who took time out from their weekly meetings to see what MTN has brought to the table.
Today we have come to provide in support a fairly reasonable quantity of personal protective items, sample of which are displayed here.
The governor seems quite confident of government's effort at curtailing the disease, speaks.
This clearly has been a tradition that we have come to associate your brand with, and especially in matters of health issues. I know that we as a government and people have also benefited.
The high point is the presentation of the items. Officials of MTN made the move.
The MTN is a supporter of good causes. So wherever there is a good cause, we support if we can.
We've made some provision of items, protective gears, and high-grade protective gears, including overalls, goggles, respirators, hoods, aprons, long-sleeve gloves, boots, sanitizers, of course also the thermometers.
Recall that in addition to this donation, MTN had also developed educational interactive voice response scripts on Ebola, so customers can learn more about the disease whenever they call. Chris Ilams, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, promises to correct lapses in voting.